Hello, good morning. Well, welcome back to our very first 2022 Homegrown Lecture Series talk. I hope you all had really great holidays. You had a good new year, but hopefully we all have a pretty good new year ahead of us. Oh, goodness, right? So obviously the big change with our Homegrown series going into this new year is that we are no longer doing it twice a month. It will be once a month on the first Thursday. So those of you that are joining us, you know that you're here. So once a month. So today we have Paul Winski going over uh, starting plants from seeds. Then next month in February, it will be Shannon Dietz with basic grafting techniques. So that one should be pretty interesting. And then finishing off the first quarter will be with me, tomatoes for the patios, since we have tons of patios and balconies and whatnot around Harris County. Uh, as a reminder, you can look through these topics and you can sign up for one, a couple, or you can go ahead and sign up for them all right now so you remember. Just be aware that you are sent that link a couple days beforehand. I know, a lot of us with emails, kind of don't keep track of that, but that's your reminder. What is not on here is the newsletter. If you signed up for this, you get the newsletter, you automatically get put on that. And that just went out, I believe, a day or two ago. Um, and we have seeds and I think an article on frost and freezes. And I also included the Master Gardener plant sales in that are coming up. And then finally, to the right is the podcast. We have, I think, about 8 under our belt now. Not quite, totally experienced, but just you can scan that and listen to our podcasts on however you listen to podcasts. There's so many different ways. So getting on to the program, I want to introduce Paul Winski. Let me bring him up here. And all right, so let's welcome Paul on starting plants from seeds. It's all yours, Paul.
All right. Well, thank you, Brandy, for that introduction. And welcome to our first homegrown lecture for 2022. Welcome back from the holidays. We are glad to be here. And today we are going to cover starting plants from seeds. It's that time of year. So people are probably starting to get excited. You've been looking at your catalogs. Maybe you're purchasing seed already. One of the things I like about starting plants from seed is it is fun and it is enjoyable. If you take that small, tiny seed, you plant it in a pot or in the ground, you get that germination to occur, and eventually you have a full-blown plant. So it really is pretty amazing. It's quite inexpensive. It's really not, I guess, an expensive hobby to get into if you really enjoy propagation. And the good thing I really like about it is you get to choose what you want to grow. Sometimes we're limited when you go to the garden centers as to what varieties there are. But you can go and really be really creative and try varieties that maybe you don't normally see that the large growers aren't producing. So it's a fun way to really get the plants that you want and trial them and evaluate them and see how well they perform. So when we talk about seeds, our seeds are all over there's a lot of different options, but first let's touch on a little bit of seed anatomy. Okay, so what is it that is so cool about the plants that we can propagate from seed? So when we look at it, there's two types of seeds. All right, we have monocots, which are grasses, corn. What else is there? Allium, onions, things like that. And then we have our dicots, and that's majority of the seeds that I have here out on the table. The main thing, the monocot, you've got the embryo, the endosperm. It provides all the energy, nutrients that seed's going to need to germinate. So the main thing that we need to do is provide the ideal conditions for that seed to germinate. And what are those conditions? It needs moisture, it needs some heat, and it needs probably a bit of humidity. All right. So they're the three things we need to provide in order for this seed to germinate. If we look at a dicot seed, which are most of the seeds, your tomatoes, your peppers, your sunflowers, any of your flowers, it's a little bit more going on inside that seed. But the main thing is, we have the epicotyl, the hypocotyl. The radicle is that first root, the primary root that comes out, and then the cotyledons. And the cotyledons are the first true, or the seed leaves that emerge. So in a dicot, you're going to have two. In a monocot, you're going to have one. And we'll take a look just to see here with regard to a monocot. So we've got our corn seed. It's in the soil. It starts to emerge. Here's that first leaf. See, it's just a single leaf. So that's where we get that monocot name. Then it continues to emerge, development, and then we've got our stalk with our true leaves, which are emerging. And you can see with corn, we get what we call the prop roots, or some aerial roots, which help with water uptake and also establishment. If we look at the dicot, you can see it's a little bit different. So the first thing, we're going to get that radicle that's going to emerge. The seed coat's going to start to break. That hypocotyl, which is the stem, is going to start to elongate. The cotyledons are going to start to also emerge, and here are those cotyledons, and we're going to see two. So they are the first leaves that come out, and then as the plant establishes, we start to get the true leaves. So this is really what is occurring inside that seed. All of that is inside. Let's open up one of these here. We've got a tomato seed here. And let's just open it up. But you can see, they're coming in all different shapes and sizes. So here's our tomato seed. Okay, pretty small, but you can handle it with your hands. All right, pretty easy. Let's go to sunflowers. Now we go ahead and we eat sunflowers seeds, so everybody's pretty aware, but you can see the difference in size of these. Much easier to work with. So, if you've got young children, if you've got small children around, grandkids, your own kids, maybe work with some of the larger seeds because it'll be easier for them to handle. So you can see these seeds are, we've got all types of seeds. And they're available from many different sources. I was in Home Depot, I was in Lowe's, I was in Cornelius. They've all got their seed is in for this year. The main thing you want to do is make sure you check on the back of that packet that it is packed for this growing season. Now this is from last year, so this is packed for 2021. It even said sell by 12/21. Some packets might even have the germination percentage. So it'll let you know that it's 86% germination or 90% germination. But make sure you check to make that it's for that season. Now, you might be thinking, can I use the seed? Say if I bought this in 2021, can I use it for my garden this year? Absolutely, but you've got to store it properly. The best way to store it is in a container, airtight. You can put it in Ziploc bags. You can put it in a Tupperware type container, and then put it in the refrigerator. Any type of gardener is probably going to have some sort of seeds or something in their refrigerator, or they're going to have an older refrigerator out in the garage, and they're going to have their seeds out there. And I'll let you know, I made a mistake. So before I left for the holidays, I sowed some seed that I wanted to have to show you as it was germinated. So, but the seed was old and I didn't store it properly. And guess what? I came back from the holidays, I had no germination. So do as I say, not as I do. All right. But make sure you check on the dates. and really buy what you need. Most of these packets are probably going to have about anywhere from 50 to 100 seeds. So if you've got a large area, you're going to need more seed. But if you've got a small area, you're not going to need a lot of packets of seed in order to get what you need. So you can store them at least for a year or two if you store them properly. Remember, airtight container, refrigerate. So we've got our seeds and we want to start them indoors. Where are we going to put them? The location is always the key, right? In real estate, and it's even with your plants in order to make them successful, that we're going to have good germination. So the one thing we don't want is we don't want them on a windowsill. And why is that? Because temperature fluctuation is going to be too dramatic. Everybody thinks that's the place you want it to be, but really that's not the place. You want to have it in a sort of a low traffic area where, if you're walking by or if you have children or if you have pets, they're not going to get into it. They're not going to knock it. You want to set it in that one spot. You don't want to have it in an area where there are cold drafts, and that's where windowsills can be a problem. We just went through a brief cold spell, and I'm sure if you had some seeds there by the windowsill, you would have seen, you would have felt that soil or that container would have felt cold. The other thing is just be aware, you don't want to have excess heat. You don't want to have a lot of heat. So if you've got it in the house and you've got an overhead blower or the vent from your heating system, don't set it right under that because, again, temperatures are going to fluctuate. You might dry out your soil too quickly. The one thing I would recommend if you are really going to get into propagation and doing your own thing is purchasing a propagation mat. And think of it as a heating pad that you would put underneath. If we had our tray of seeds here, we would have this mat. We could set it on it, and we could set the temperature. Usually about 72 degrees is ideal because what we want to do is we want to heat this layer where the soil is, okay? We're not really worried about the ambient air around it. As long as it's above 60 degrees, it's fine. But if we have a nice, warm, moist soil to start with, that's perfect. So again, a propagation mat, and you can purchase them online. I'm sure if you went to Amazon and popped in propagation mat, they're going to come in different sizes, and it really allows you to manage that environment of the soil and to improve the germination of those seeds. All right, so let's talk about container. How are we going to start these seeds? What are we going to grow them in? So I'm going to show you some of the things that are pre-made, and then I'm going to also show you some of the, let's say, cheaper ways to do it, because I'm all about the cheap side of things, if at all possible. But so let's take a look at this. So in this situation, these are what we call jiffy pellets. Okay, so they look like little hockey pucks, and all it is compressed peat moss. So in this container, I purchased this at one of the local stores. We got what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We've got 12 different cells. And what you do is you take this here. Here's another size. This is one that's a little bit bigger, but you soak these and then they expand. And this is what they end up looking like. So this is what I started with. And this is what it looks like after soaking for about 45 minutes or so. Doesn't take long, but it's nice. It's got its nice own little root ball. You can see the holes in there are pre-dibbled, okay? So you could just drop your seed in there, cover it with maybe a little bit vermiculite or a little bit of potting mix, and you're off and running, okay? So this kit is really kind of nice, and I like when they come with these clear lids because then you've got a nice little greenhouse. You're going to build up that humidity. Again, once you see the seed once you see emergence, okay, so you start to see it breaking the soil, take this lid off. A lot of people leave it on for too long, and that's when the seedlings start to stretch. It's too tropical in there. We need to drop temperature just a little bit. So these are some what we call Jiffy pellets. Nice little kit. These two are the same, and what you can see here is these containers or these holders. I can pop these out. These are made out of core, and so that's basically from coconut husk. So this would be a really nice sustainable approach along with these, because you could just take these and plant these directly once the seedling has established. You could put that right into a ground or shift it up into a bigger pot. But this is from core, so this is from coconut husks. So you would fill this with soil, level it off, plant your seed. And then again, the same thing. I really like the way they have these lids. You've got your own little nifty greenhouse. If you had bottom heat, you'd be perfect. Again, as soon as you start to see emergence, by all means, take this off. And then what you can do is put this back underneath, because as the plants start to grow and mature, you're going to have to water them, and this will catch some of that water. So it serves two purposes. This is the same thing, but you can see we can sow a lot more seeds here. So these are in 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 cell packs. So we got, I think, 51, 2, 3, 4. So there's 50 cells in here. So if you wanted to do 10 of one variety, 10 of another, it's just a nice way to make sure that you keep everything labeled, you keep everything separate, and you can monitor it all the way through. And then the last one is sort of what we're usually used to. This one is a plastic tray, so you can see the cells inside it. So it sits inside another tray, and this tray does not have any holes in it. This one does, I believe. Let's just turn around and take a quick look at it, because you always want to make sure you've got drainage. So this one doesn't have drainage either. So once you set it in, so just be aware of that as these plants mature. And if you keep them in this for a while and you water, you're probably going to want to drain that off, because you don't want them sitting in all that moisture that you're going to end up having root issues. But this tray is nice. Also, again, a little bit larger. You fill it with your soil mix. The other thing that's nice is it is reusable. So once you use it up, your plants are out, clean it up, get all of the organic matter, so any of the potting mix that's in there, clean it out, and then sanitize it. 10% bleach, soak it for about 30 minutes, pull it out, rinse it off, and you can use the trays again. So I'm all about reusing as much as you can, because, A, it's good overall practice, and B, it'll save you some money. Now, if you don't want to go this route, what you can do is, take out trays. This is from baby spinach. It's basically the same thing, okay? So you've got little greenhouses here. And so you can see how I used it. These are the ones that I sowed on Saturday, but I cut the lid, sewed it in there. Actually, I'm starting to see some germination in here. So they must have woke up for me. But sure thing. Go. Couldn't you? So the question is, couldn't you use a heating pad as a hack? That's a great question. When I was much younger and didn't know any different, I did use a heating pad. The only thing you got to watch is, the fire hazard, electrical hazard. If you buy a propagation mat, it's made for getting wet and, that type of environment. Can you get by with a heating pad? Yes. But just be aware, if it gets wet, you could potentially have problems. So the propagation mat is going to be much safer, and you're going to be better off using that. Great question. So the question is, why do you need that propagation mat if you're starting them indoors? It just the overall the propagation mat, it will improve your germination. It will hasten it, so it will happen. If germination normally happens, say in 10 days, there's a good chance with heating mat, propagation mat, you're going to see rooting or germination maybe within 5 days, 5 to 7 days. So it does help that overall environment. And if in 3 months, I'm going to be back talking about starting from cuttings. Propagation mats are great for rooting cuttings also. So it's not just going to be for seeds. When I was in the industry, we had houses, several 100,000 square feet of benches were all bottom heat in propagation. And it just improves the overall process. So you can see, you can take some of these clamshell trays, fill it. There are holes in here, so it drains, but it works just as well. A nice little greenhouse. Same here with these are with the Jiffy pellets. You just set them in there. Nice little greenhouse, and you're on your way. So, sure thing. Ask away. Okay, so great question. So does the media need to be, I guess, pre-treated or sterilized? If you are buying, and that's a great question because I'm coming right into it. We talked about containers. We talked about this. We're talking about the type of mix. What you want is you want a nice, loose, airy mix. And this is what I use for my propagation. When you purchase it in the bag, it is going to be clean. It's going to be sterile. So you don't have to do anything to it. If you don't use soil out of your garden for propagation, especially here, it's going to be too heavy. It's going to stay too wet. You can potentially have a lot of disease problems. So if you buy a good mix, and there are mixes out there that are, Scott's has it with regard to seed starting mix. It's a lighter, it's a softer mix, but any of the good quality potting soils will work well for seed starting. So by all means, you don't have to sterilize it. You don't have to put it in the oven. If you're buying a fresh bag of mix, you're good to go. It's not an issue. Most of the mixes are going to have either perlite, vermiculite, and peat moss in it to various degrees. These plugs or these pellets are strictly just going to be peat moss, and that's fine. Once you get them wet, they stay wet, and you are good to go. With your soil mixes, what I like to do and what I'm going to do as we work through this is one that I filled this tray. I water it down, and I sort of just let it sit about a day or so. What that does is it pushes out the air. We want it moist, but we don't want it sopping wet, okay, because we can end up having some disease issues. And the main problem with seeds and germination is a problem we call damping off. And I've got an image here, and you may have seen this if you've started your own seed, but this is damping off. It's caused by either a fungus or a phytoplasma. But if you can see this area right in here, right at the soil line, it's like someone came in and pinched it off. You can see it's brown. If you sow seedlings and you see them falling over and you see this brown or black spot at that interface where the stem and the soil are, you've got damping off. And most of the times, you've either kept it too wet or too cold. They are the two conditions that are key for that disease to occur. So that's why it's another reason why that propagation mat, that bottom heat, will help improve that, because it'll keep those conditions much better. Okay, so we talked about mix, we talked about bottom heat, we talked about containers. Let's go ahead. We're going to sow some seeds, but we've got a couple questions, so let's go with those. Did we put a hole in these? Yes. So in these, whoops, in these, no, I have not put any holes yet, but I would cut out some holes to provide some drainage. So this way, when I soak this, if I fill it with soil, I water it, it drains through, and we're not going to have any issues with it. But all of these, they all have holes in them. Oh, paper pots, absolutely. And whatever you prefer growing in, paper pots work fine. Agent that used to be here, Skip Richter, he showed us how to roll paper pots. He would do all of his seed propagation in those. He'd roll them, fill them with soil. So it's a great way of recycling. It's a sustainable practice. By all means, if you are into that, go for it. And it's very easy to do. And you planted them up. Paper breaks down. It works really well. So, you know, if you had a tray like this, you could put your paper pots inside there filled, and then you could cover it with the lid. As soon as you get emergence or germination, you take the lid off and let the plants grow, and you're off and running with your garden. Okay, that's great. Keep them coming. Okay, so the question is about the coconut core pots. Do you pull the plant out to reuse them? Do you plant the whole thing? I would plant, they are made to plant the entire thing. They're already pre-perforated, so these would come apart once they get wet and the plant starts to grow in it. It's just a lot easier just to take the whole thing, plant it out. It's less damage to the root system, less shock to the plant when you put it in the ground, and it's just going to be a much happier plant once it gets started in the garden. One more question. All righty. Okay, so if you've got that mildew on it, it's probably, well, it could be several things. If it's not new mix or new soil, then it might be old. The other one is it's staying too wet or too cold. So that's one of the issues. You can scrape some of that off. If it's not affecting the germination, you're probably okay. What I would do is maybe scrape it off. But usually if that's the case, remember, once I sow the seeds on this, I'm not watering this again until the plants are larger, because everything that plant needs to get started is inside that seed. So there's plenty of energy. You don't have to worry about fertilizer, and there's plenty of moisture in here. And that's why we don't like to have them on windowsills, because windowsills, especially if it's west facing, that afternoon sun can get quite hot even in the winter, and you're going to see some issues with things drying out. So if you've got it in a good steady spot where the temperature doesn't fluctuate too much, you shouldn't see that issue. Yes. So the question is the that mat safe for containers like this? Absolutely, because you're not heating it. You know, you're probably setting it to about 70, 72 degrees. So it's not going to negatively affect the plastic here. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and let me see. Let's go ahead and sow some seeds. I'll just show you my technique. Hey, everybody does it differently. Let me take my glasses off so I can see what's going on here. This is going to be some marigold seeds. I like marigold seeds, for this demonstration because they are large. You can see them, and I can see them, and they're easier to handle. So this is interesting. This is seed that we get from All-American Selections. All right, so this was a regional winner. This is marigold big duck yellow. And so what I'm going to do is, this is from the seed company, and I like the way they do it. In the industry, we always get it'll say on there what the germination percentage is. So on this marigold seed, let me see here, if you can see that, it says the germination is 86%, and the purity of this seed is 98%. So what they mean about the purity is sometimes there's some chaff, there's some pieces of seed. They clean it up as best they can, and the process is really pretty interesting when you see it. But then again, on here, it also has the expiration date. So on this one, it says 10/25/22. So this seed is good until October of this year. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a few seeds out. I'll put them on, get them sown in here. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see that. I guess I got a future as a hand model here. And all I'm going to do is just take this, and since this soil is nice and moist, I'm just going to put it on the surface and tap it down. And I'm going to probably go about 3 across. And probably, let's see, maybe about a dozen plants I'll put in here. So, or 9, we'll see. I don't want to get them too close to each other, because then once they germinate and they start to grow, it's going to be difficult to get them out of here. So that's why using the other trays that I talked about earlier with the cells in them, it's nice because you can put, that seed is only going to grow in that cell, and when you remove it, you're just removing that cell because it's going to have a nice root system to it. So that's one of the things that's a lot nicer about using those types of trays. So I would put the extras back in. I'm going to put it in this foil pack. And then if I was going to store this, I'm going to put it in either in a Ziploc bag or a mason jar and put it in the refrigerator. Now, the other thing you've got to do is you got to make sure you label it. And I go the cheap route here also. So I'm just using popsicle sticks. I think there's 150 in here, and I'm sure it wasn't that expensive. I like to use a pencil, so let me see. This was Marigold Big Duck, so I would put the name on it. I'm just going to say Marigold Big Duck. And then on the other side, I'm going to put today's date, which is the 6th. So I'm going to put 1/6/22. So basically that is my label. I like to use pencil. Don't use pen. It will run. You can use Sharpie, but I think pencil works the best. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly cover this. And this is vermiculite. And this is like soft like a pillow. What I would recommend, this is more of the coarse vermiculite. When you're doing seeds and things, you can get a finer grade, a less coarse variety type. But I'm just going to take it and just cover it ever so slightly. Now, as you start to get into this, some seeds need light to germinate, other ones don't. So if it doesn't need light, you can bury it and you can cover it up. If it does need light, a light covering of vermiculite will be fine. And then the last thing I would do with this is just, I'm going to try not to make too much of a mess. But I'm just going to take, when you do propagation, whether it's seeds or cuttings, spray bottle is always ideal. And I'm just going to mist that down. What I want to do is make sure I get that seed in contact with the soil that's nice and moist, and the vermiculite that's on top of it, I want it to be moist also. And so we've got a nice layer there of, we've got our soil, we've got our seed, and then we've got our vermiculite. I'm just going to take this label, lay it in here. I would put the lid on top like so, and then I'm ready to go. I've got my own little greenhouse in here. So that is what we've got going on here. And I'm just going to show you real quick with these Jiffy pellets. I'm going to take some of this sunflower seed. So this is Mammoth Russian. You can see seed morphology or overall, some of the seeds are really kind of pretty. I've seen posters where they've got all different types of seeds, and it's really amazing that the colors of them. But this one is nice. You know, these holes are pre-dibbled. You know, so you just take that seed down in there, press it in ever so slightly, and you will be good to go. So I would do the same thing then. I would take a little bit of vermiculite just to cover the top, make a label. So this label would be Sunflower Mammoth Russian, which is one of the taller varieties. Cover it with the lid, put my label, and I'm good to go. So that's it with regard to how we sow the seed. Next thing I want to do, let me see here real quick. With our seedlings, as they start to come up, as I mentioned, you don't have to fertilize them. The energy from inside, that endosperm and everything is there to get it going. As these plants get larger, so if you had them in something like this is a bigger cell, it's going to be in there a little bit longer, you're going to probably have to fertilize it. I wouldn't come in with a full strength fertilizer. I would come in probably with about quarter strength. I think you'll be fine. And then once that plant is ready, the main thing is what you want to do is transition from being indoors and start to hardening off outdoors. And hardening off is we get that plant ready for transplanting. It gets exposed to the elements, especially the breeze, the wind, which will help keep that height in check. The last thing is these are some petunias that I sowed, I guess probably about a month and a half or so ago. So these are ones that actually we're doing. I sowed some, and this is going to be at a trial down at the GFG, Genoa Friendship Garden, that we do with the Master Gardeners. And these were all started in these Jiffy pellets. So what I did was I sowed the seed in these Jiffy pellets, and then I transplanted to these 3.5-inch pots. And so you can see the growth on these. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one out. So this is the petunia pink, and gosh, what's the series? I forget the name of the series now. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. It's the first of the year. I'm still on vacation, I guess. But you can see the root systems on it. So these guys probably a little dry, but look how nice and healthy and white that root system is. So these are ready to go in the ground. So I will need to water these when I get these back home, and probably this weekend, if the weather cooperates, I'll end up planting these in the ground. Oh, these are the wave petunias. That's what they are. This is pink wave. But you can see they're already initiating flower buds already. They're great for the cool season now. So, you know, it really just depends on what your system is, what you're growing, whether you want to go from something like, you know, a pellet like this. Once the plant starts to establish, depending on the type of plant and the time of year, you could go directly into the ground with this. If you want a bigger, beefier plant, then, you know, you're probably going to have to put it in maybe a 3 or 3.5-inch pot in order to get more plant and more bulk to that plant. Oh, absolutely. The cost savings with a pack of seeds, the number of plants that you could potentially generate as opposed to purchasing, you know, a 6-pack of something, it's night and day. So yes, might be even a little bit more than that. Yeah, might even be a little bit more than that. Quick question. Let's go. Great question. So the question is, does the packet tell you if it needs light to germinate or if it needs darkness? These packets, I don't think, have that. But I do think some of the, let me see, location, sunny, danger. I'm going to look at these real quick here just to see. Some of them say barely cover the seed. So, it doesn't say, dark germination. I think a couple of the links that I gave to Brandy that she probably will be posting, there are links there that says light for germination or darkness for germination. So you can always look that up. If you have any questions, you can always send us an email and we can help you out. Let me see the closeout. If you really get into propagation and you really want to do it, whether it's seeds, cuttings, grafting, whatever, this book is sort of the Bible. It was around when I was an undergrad. It's still used. It's Plant Propagation Principles and Practices. When I had it, it was only Hartman and Kester. Now it's Hartman, Kester, and Davies. Dr. Davies is a retired professor at A&M, but it goes through all the different processes, and then in the back of the book, it'll go by species and give you ideas or give you information on how to either germinate the seed, or if you have to take cuttings, when to take cuttings. And there's also the other group I guess I want to talk about or mention is the International Plant Propagator Society, which has a ton of information on propagation also. So, any other questions? We've got some time. That's why I wanted to sort of get through that and we can answer questions. Okay, so what I would say is it's going to depend on if you're using a plug like this, or it's in something like this, let's say, as you start to see some roots, the roots will start to come towards the edge. There's a fine mesh around this, and then the peat moss is inside it. You'll start to see roots coming towards the edge. The other thing is it will start to dry out on you quicker. So that's when you know, hey, it's time to get it into the next size or get it in the ground. So that's the best way. The plant's going to let you know when it's ready for that next step, whether it's in the ground or in a larger pot. Okay, so the question is watering. Do we do it from the top, the bottom, and why? At this stage, where I'm not going to water it. Probably, if any, maybe once they're bigger, because they're not going to be pulling a lot of moisture out of this. So if you've done your job well with getting it, getting the moisture established, you should be fine. An issue. Depending on the size of the plants, if they're young seedlings, say maybe less than a month, and don't have a lot of foliage on them yet, I'm probably going to water from the bottom. If they are larger plants, I'm going to water from the top, because that, just that motion of that water droplet hitting it is going to, when we talked about hardening off, it's going to help harden off that plant and stiffen up those stems. Okay. Okay. You can just plug it in and you won't have to do it. Okay, go ahead. Next question. Okay, so great question. With them becoming stretchy or leggy, that's one of the problems. No, hold on, I need a timeout here. We're having some video issues. The plug-in, no, it's on the side that Shannon's on, right there. Our battery on our camera is running low, so we got to plug it in, so bear with us. There we go. Okay. So we don't want to lose you guys. We're coming into the home at the end here. Stretching or leggy plants, they're probably not getting enough light and they're staying too moist. So they're going to stretch. So if you had them under maybe a little light box or something, or a tray where you had some either fluorescent or LED, the plants naturally, it's called a tropism, where they grow towards the light. Phototropism is they're going towards that light with the hormones that are inside the plant. And so if you had the light overhead, they would not be stretching or going towards the light. They're going to stay where they need to be. So it's really just the amount of light and the light source that's causing that stretching to occur. Ger- Geraniums. Calibrachoa. So right, various seeds. There's always some of them are more difficult than others. So what I would do is the seed companies are actually a great resource. When you purchase your seed there's usually a lot of online information there, because there might be some tips or tricks that you might need to do in order to improve that germination percentage. The smaller seed, the more difficult it is to work with. The conditions have to be spot on a little bit more. Begonia seed is always difficult. I always struggle with begonia. I don't even bother doing begonias anymore. If I have a trial, I will purchase from um, uh, a grower or a propagator that does them, because they're so finicky. I always run into issues. So I sort of, there's certain ones that I'll stay away from. But some people like that challenge and figuring it out. There's seeds that need to be soaked in boiling water for a certain period of time in order to help soften that seed coat so the embryo can emerge. Some need a cold treatment. Like I said, as you get into propagation a little bit more, and if you really want to get into it, this book will help you out. It'll answer a lot of questions, and there may be tips inside here for some of the species that you mentioned in order to help improve your germination percentages. Great question. When do you move plants outside for hardening? Usually here we can do it just about, as those plants are getting taller, as they're getting more mature, you can go ahead and move them out. Just be aware of our night temperatures. If you've got them underneath, a little bit protected. I've seen people, they'll take them out in the daytime, move them in at night. That's fine also. Safely though, I would say after, normally our last frost date is February 15th. I always tell people wait until March 1st. So, just be aware of that. If watch the calendar, Mother Nature is always finicky. We never know what we're going to get, but just watch that calendar. If we've got temperatures that are going down, if you've got a nice little plant that's doing well, and our night temperatures are in the 50s and our days are in the 70s, you can move it outside. It's going to do fine, and it's going to harden off, and you're going to have a much better plant when it goes into the garden, into the ground. So the fertilizing, the seedlings, I would not start until we've got a real plant there. So these I started to fertilize, but when they're young, germinating, you don't need to. There's enough energy from the endosperm and from everything that's inside that seed to get it going. Once you've got multiple sets of true leaves, so I would say at least 3 to 5 sets of true leaves, and if the color is off a little, you can fertilize it, but just give it like a quarter strength of what you would normally give if you're doing liquid. Don't give it full strength, because the salts could potentially burn those roots and you're going to have some issues. The $1 million question. How do you know when to start your seeds in order to have them ready? Okay, so what I would say is you've got to count backwards. When do you want the plants to go into the garden? So say you are thinking of a March 1st plant. We're talking about tomatoes. And tomatoes, let's see what information they give us on here, and we'll go through this real quick. Okay, so seedlings should emerge in 7 to 10 days. All right, so March 1st is 8 weeks away, right? If that's what we're shooting for. And I've got this Roma tomato, and I know if I sow the seed, we should start to see seeds emerge in 7 to 10 days. All right, so we're going to start to see little seedlings coming up. It's probably going to be another 2 to 3 weeks before that seedling is large enough to say, if we started in something like this pellet or this pellet, if you're going directly with that seed right into there, you can sow it into there and just grow it out. And by March 1st, you're probably going to be fine. If you're going with something smaller, it's probably about 3 to 4 weeks in something like this. And then it's going to go into like a 3.5-inch pot. And it's probably going to take another, depending on temperatures and conditions, maybe another 3 to 5 weeks after that. So we're probably, 4 is 8. We're probably, anywhere in that, say that March 1st to March 15th date. So the main thing, and when we did production scheduling in college, learn to count backwards. What is the sales date, or what is the date that you want it in the ground, and start working backwards. And I believe some of the links that I gave will give you that information with regard to how long that it takes for that plant to be ready for transplanting. So. You can, again, you just have to watch the management of the moisture in that soil. A bigger pot is going to stay wetter longer. The temperatures, managing the temperature on these smaller cells, it might be a little bit cooler in a bigger cell as opposed to a smaller cell. So, but yes, you can do it by all means, but just remember your microenvironment is going to be different in a bigger cell as opposed to something smaller. Using supplemental lighting indoors, especially, going to help. You can use it anytime. The main thing it does is it's going to improve the overall quality of the seedling as it starts to grow. When I was back in the Northeast in Philly, I had it in my basement, and it just had 2 trays on it, two levels. Wasn't very big. Sat on the top of a desk like this, and I would start my seed in there. The main thing is, again, the quality of the seedling is going to be much better because you're giving it a set amount of light. It doesn't need light 24 hours a day. 16 hours tops, at least 12, but 16 hours is what I used to set it. 8 hours of darkness, 16 hours of light. Okay. Let's do this. How about if we can capture those questions? What's the best way to do this? Let's what time we got? Let's go 6 more minutes, and then we'll you know what we might do is we will hold these questions, maybe do it as I'll do a separate podcast, and I'll just go through these questions and answer them. And then everybody that has registered, when that podcast is done, I will send you the link to it, and you can listen to it, and we'll go through it that way. So let's go a few more minutes, and then whatever questions are left, I'll do it as a separate podcast. Maybe someone can ask me the questions, I'll answer them, and we'll send you that link on a separate deal once it's done. Couple more, yeah. 4 parts. All right, let's go. Okay, so the main thing, the main gist of that question is they want to know, when do we do the transplanting, and how often do we water? And so, I think, as I mentioned in some of these other ones, it's going to depend on the size of the cell that you are growing this in. So, a plant, the volume of soil is going to be the limiting factor with any plant, whether you're growing something in a 10-inch pot or, a 100-gallon pot. Volume of soil is going to limit the growth on that plant. So as they are coming up, very little water. So once it's sown inside here, until I keep this lid on it, it's a nice little greenhouse. As it starts to emerge, I take it off and then I just let them grow. I'm not giving them any additional water. I will come by and feel it. When the soil is moist and wet, it's going to be heavier than if it's dry. So that's the easiest way to figure out if you need water. Depending on the plant or the cell that you're using, this cell, if you start to see roots coming through the bottom, it's probably going to be time to transplant. Pull the cell out, look at the root system. If you've got a root system like we're seeing here, where we're getting fill, it's filling in this whole pot. Okay, that's ready to go in the ground. All right, we pull that out. It's not falling apart. I'm not seeing only halfway roots. I've got roots to the bottom. They're white and they're healthy. It's time to go. The sooner you get it in, the happier that plant's going to be. Okay, great. You leave the plants once they start to germinate. Once they start to emerge, you can pull them off that the mat, because that bottom heat, it's done what it's needed to do. It's the seed has broken dormancy. It's starting to grow. You can leave it on, until I leave it on at least until the first set of leaves emerges. And once they emerge, that plant is on its way. Fluorescent is the easiest, but now there's LED lights, and there's kits out there where they just work really well. They're cheaper to run because they use less energy. They're specific to the light, the wavelength that the plant needs. So I'm sure there's a lot out there that you can go and say, if I need it for seed starting, LEDs, it'll say it might need far red or blue, or it might need white light. It depends. Again, if you have questions on that and you're not sure, you can always shoot us an email and we can help work through that with you. Because, in the past, it was always fluorescent light. And now we've got all these other lights, and we're seeing better quality seedlings by using these LEDs, because we can give specific wavelength to the plant, and the plant's going to do much better. All right. Hey, this has been a great kickoff to the Homegrown series for 2022. I want to thank you all, Harris County, for joining us. Again, we will answer those questions. I'm going to do it as a podcast. If you registered, and we had quite a big group register for this, which we love, we appreciate you. But you'll get a survey, you'll get the link to the recording on YouTube, and then give me about a week or so to get through these questions. I'll record it. I'll send you the link for the podcast, and you can listen through that and get any more information that you need. So until next month, I want to thank you for the A&R unit. For myself, I'm Paul Winski. Shannon Dietz on the camera. Lily's been watching questions here. Brandy, who's been running the thing at the main computer for us. Thank you for your help. And Harris County, keep gardening. We'll see you soon.